Hello, and welcome to the CRP Contract Workshop for Public Facility Projects that are being funded through the Community Resiliency Program. Before we get started, we would like to mention that if anyone has questions during the webinar, please enter them in the question function area. We will do our best to answer as many questions during the Q&A session at the end of the webinar. If your question is not answered today, someone from our team will personally reach out to you to provide you with the correct response to your question. In addition, the presentation and forms will be available at the TDHCA website, and here is a direct web link. This slide goes over the workshop outline that consists of the CRP contract overview. In addition, here are contract action items that will be discussed further in the presentation, and they include action item number 1, which is the environmental review, if it is determined to be applicable to your project. Most of the subrecipients that have this requirement are finishing up or have completed this part of phase 1. Action item number 2, section 3 requirements. Action item number 3 is procurement and bids. Action item number 4 is a construction contract. And lastly, action item number 5 is compliance with Davis-Bacon labor standards. This slide goes over the contract and what you should expect to see. First, all subrecipients that submitted a project term of 20 months will have a CRP contract period of 24 months. And subrecipients that submitted a project term of 24 months will have a CRP contract period of 28 months. We extended the contract terms by 4 months to allow for flexibility and adaptability to achieve each contract milestone for each subrecipient. In addition, Exhibit A will include the milestones from your application that are specific to your CRP project. This exhibit may need to be updated based on the current status of your CRP project. Next, we have Exhibit B, which will include your performance statement. After that, the following 2 exhibits pertain to the contract budget that come from the finalized budgets that were submitted by you to us. Exhibit C will provide the project and admin budget, and Exhibit D will provide the final construction budget. The last exhibit is E, and that covers special conditions. We want to stress the importance of reviewing your contract thoroughly. Please don't hesitate to contact us for any questions of any type of assistance and guidance that you need during this process. The contract addenda includes the following 4. Addendum A, certification regarding lobbying for contracts, grants, loans, and cooperative agreements. Addendum B, certification regarding drug-free workplace requirements. Addendum C, certification regarding debarment, suspension, and other responsibility matters. And Addendum D, certification regarding duplication of benefits. The Land Use Restriction Agreement, also known as LURA, is being completed by the TDHCA Legal Department and will be included with the contract. The LURA aligns with the 5-year CDBG use requirement, and a recorded copy needs to be provided to TDHCA. This slide provides the subrecipient's key responsibilities, which include compliance with requirements as set forth in the contract, compliance with record keeping of pertinent data related to project and allow access to TDHCA staff and HUD representatives as requested, timely completion of project as per contract, submit data for reports as requested, maintain and operate facility as required per national objective, comply with labor standards, and comply with Section 3. This chart visually depicts all the parties that may be involved in the CRP project and the necessary contracts that must be executed with each one. Throughout this presentation, the colors will match to the responsible party. For example, if the subrecipient is responsible, the subheading will be in yellow. Subrecipients are not able to use CDBG-CV funds before executing the CRP contract. Also, eligible costs and expenses incurred prior to contract period will be reimbursed. Lastly, HUD funds will only reimburse expenditures for eligible activities. You have seen the slide in the previous webinar, and it goes over the eligible and ineligible costs for the CRP contract. I will give you a moment to review them. Okay, moving forward. Changes have been made to the environmental process. The subrecipient does not need to submit documentation prior to publication. This chart has been updated to reflect the process change. Therefore, once the subrecipient completes the ERR, they can go ahead and publish. Also, we classify the Phase 1 if your project involves acquisition. A Phase 1 ESA is required. If there is no acquisition and your research report meets the requirements regarding the EPA's AAI requirements, then no Phase 1 may be required. Please check with us. After you publish your environmental notices, make sure that the title report submitted to us or yet to be obtained has an effective date that is within 60 days of the anticipated environmental clearance date. CRP contracts will be executed once you obtain environmental clearance, and the CRP contract and LURA must be executed within 60 days of the title report effective date. You may need an updated one called a down date.
Our next action item is Section 3 requirements. Section 3 requires that to the greatest extent feasible, employment opportunities created by the project will be directed toward low and very low income persons. The benchmarks created by HUD require that 25% of the project's total labor hours are performed by Section 3 workers, and 5% of the project's total labor hours are performed by targeted Section 3 workers. We'll get to those definitions here in a bit. If you're unable to meet these benchmarks, we will need to report justification to HUD, which we'll also cover shortly. HUD's regulations for implementing Section 3 are found in 24 CFR Part 75. If you're interested in reviewing more information on Section 3, the Texas Department of Agriculture's revised policy issuance could be helpful to you as well. Let's go over what your responsibilities are as a subrecipient in order to comply with Section 3. Each of your contracts is subject to the Section 3 final rule, and with that comes reporting requirements. A couple of forms to keep in mind. There's Form S301, which is the Section 3 contractor report. This is for your local files only, but you must complete one for each contractor and subcontractor that works on the project. Form S302 is the Section 3 completion report. That's a cumulative report that you're going to complete and submit to TDHCA at project completion. This report is really important because it's tied to the release of your last project draw, so we need to receive and approve that before you can get those funds. We've also listed here some steps to be compliant with the new Section 3 requirements. This is for your reference as well. There's a service area map, which we will get into more detail on in just a bit, but we do need to receive a copy of the service area map. Any procurement and bidding documents must comply with and reference Section 3. And prior to contract procurement and the selection of your contractor, we need you to document bidding outreach efforts that were made to employ eligible Section 3 contractors prior to bid opening. For open public meetings, be sure to document Section 3 goals and present employment opportunities to those low-income residents and individuals in the area. And you can document that with a meeting agenda and meeting minutes. And for your outreach to local workforce offices, make sure that you do announce those Section 3 job opportunities and document that outreach. And for contractor compliance, include Section 3 compliance provisions in all of your contractor contracts. This is regardless of the contractor tier level, it just needs to be in every contract. Here we've included some examples of additional outreach efforts for your reference to make sure that Section 3 workers and targeted Section 3 workers have the opportunity to benefit from these job opportunities and that Section 3 businesses have the opportunity to compete for contracting. Be sure to carefully document any outreach efforts that are made. Should you not be able to meet the Section 3 benchmarks as laid out by HUD, this information will be very important for reporting purposes. Let's briefly cover the responsibilities of all contractors working on this project. All hired contractors must document the labor hours performed by each eligible Section 3 employee, as well as the low-income status of each of those employees. The required documentation includes, but is not limited to, payroll to document the work hours completed, and Section 3 certification for businesses and workers, as well as Section 3 worker forms. These documents will be provided to you to pass on to your contractors. At the bottom of the screen, you can see the HUD income limits that we are using for the CRP program. These income limits will determine the income level of possibly eligible Section 3 employees. What is a Section 3 business? To be classified as a Section 3 business, the business must meet at least one of these criteria. It is owned by low-income persons, owned by public housing or Section 8 assisted residents, or 75% of all labor hours for the business over the prior 3 months are performed by Section 3 workers. On the bottom of the slide, we've included a link where businesses can register as Section 3 on the HUD portal. So what is a Section 3 worker? The Section 3 final rule defines 2 subsets of workers for Section 3 projects. There is a Section 3 worker and a targeted Section 3 worker. A Section 3 worker is any worker who currently fits, or when hired within the past 5 years fit, at least one of the following categories as documented. The worker is employed by a Section 3 business. The worker is either low or very low income based on the income limit established by HUD, or the worker is a youth build participant. A targeted Section 3 worker follows the same pattern. The only difference is a targeted Section 3 worker could be a low or very low income worker residing within the service area of the project, which is a 1 mile radius of the Section 3 project. This brings us back to the service area map, which we touched on earlier. You must submit a Section 3 service area map to the department. In order to do this, first identify the project site. The project site is the area included in the environmental review project description. The center point of this project site is the basis for the Section 3 service area. To create the map, identify a circle around the center of the project site with a radius of 1 mile. This circle should have a population greater than 5,000 people within the 1 mile radius. If you have a population of less than 5,000 people, according to the most recent census, then you will need to aggregate census block group geographies totaling a minimum of 5,000 persons that both surrounds all components of the project site and most closely approximates a circle shape. Here we've included 2 examples. The example on the left, 2A, is what your service area map will look like if you have a population greater than 5,000 within 1 mile. And on the right, example 2B, that is what your service area map will look like if you do not have at least 5,000 people within the 1 mile radius.
This slide goes over action item number 3, procurement and bids. This is a responsibility for the subrecipient. Subrecipients must comply with the procurement process for selection of architect, engineer, professional services. Subrecipients must also comply with procurement procedures for solicitation for bids or construction requests for proposals, such as RFPs or RFQs. Also, subrecipients must include other HUD federal requirements for CDBG in your construction bid publication, such as Section 3, Davis-Bacon related acts, and applicable DOL wage determination. Here's a figure of bid steps that you can follow or that should be followed for the procurement and bid process. Action item number 4 includes subrecipient responsibilities pertaining to the execution of the construction contract. The responsibilities include all improvements must be constructed in accordance with plans and specifications prepared by the subrecipient's registered architect or licensed professional engineer, abide by all local and state laws and federal regulations, and all contractors and subcontractors should have required insurance. These insurances can include workers' compensation, liability insurance, vehicle insurance, and performance payment bonds as applicable. Action item number 5 covers the Davis-Bacon labor standards and contains responsibilities for subrecipients and TDHCA. This slide goes over subrecipient responsibilities that include all hired contractors must comply with Davis-Bacon worker wage mandates applicable to the project. All executed construction contracts must incorporate HUD federal labor standard provisions and TDHCA approved DOL general wage determination. Also, participation in TDHCA sponsored pre-construction conference is required, and the attendees must include the subrecipient, the appointed labor standards officer, and the prime contractor. All contractors must complete and submit weekly payrolls every 7 days to the assigned LSO for review and approval. In addition, all forms will be made available on the TDHCA website and have been adapted from various sources such as TDA, TDHCA, and HUD. Therefore, these forms should be familiar to most that are attending this workshop. We are still working on finalizing the forms for the CRP program and will make them available on our website to you as soon as we can. This slide is another subrecipient responsibility that pertains to the first admin draw and the first project draw, as each relates to labor standards. The first admin draw will require the subrecipient to appoint a labor standards officer. The LSO cannot be an employee of the construction company, and that will be Form DB01. And for the first project draw, you need to use Form DB03. This is for the TDHCA 10-day call, which must take place prior to bidding. This form ensures that the wage determination is current. These forms are available on the TDHCA website. TDHCA will issue a notice to proceed to notify the subrecipient that they can start construction. When the subrecipient issues their own NTP, please provide a copy to TDHCA. Here is an example of the notice to proceed that you should be receiving from us. This slide provides a recap of the action items and what needs to be done prior to the first admin draw. They include the housing contract system, also referred to as HCS. This action item has already been completed, and we will host another webinar with each subrecipient to discuss HCS and how to properly submit admin and project draws. The next one is an environmental clearance. Following that is Section 3 requirements that require submission of the service area map. And lastly, the Davis-Bacon labor standards, which also includes appointing a labor standards officer, aka LSO. This slide provides the names and titles for each team and their respective members. On the left side, we have Erica Garza, who is a program manager and will be the team lead that includes the following program coordinators: Kitty Wilkinson and myself, Lauren Robbie. On the right side is Raul Salazar, who is a program manager, and his team consists of Allison Schur, who is a program administrator, and the program coordinators Kendall Cowden and Fatima Andrade. Now we will start the Q&A session.